Cześć, hello, witam, and welcome to Pierogi to Prayer, the official podcast of St. Joseph's Polish Apostolate of the Diocese of Camden, coming to you from our historic home at 1010 Liberty Street in Camden, New Jersey, the heart of South Jersey's Polonia for over 130 years. I am your host, Michael Matalevich. The Christmas holiday season is a special time for millions of Christians around the world. Many cultures have a myriad of traditions surrounding this most festive time of year, and Poland is no exception. Christmas, or as it is said in Polish, Boże Narodzenie, literally translating to Nativity of God, evokes the deeply religious significance of this holiday for Poles. Its celebrations and traditions, both in Poland and throughout the Polish diaspora, are infused with religious significance, but also hark back to ancient practices, reaching across time before the advent of the first Christmas. Today, to talk about some of these traditions, is a radio personality in her own right, Debbie Majka. An incredible pillar of the Polish community in Philadelphia, Debbie is uniquely qualified to talk about this subject due to her own heritage, but also in her role as the Honorary Polish Consul. For now, however, I invite you to take yourself, at least mentally, out of your car, home, office, or whatever place you're listening to us. It is now the evening of December the 24th, Christmas Eve. The first star has just appeared, and it is time to sit at Babcia's table for the start of Vigilia, the sacred and delicious Christmas Eve supper. I guess just start by talking a little bit about yourself. What's your association with the Polish community? And just sort of give us some background.
It's my pleasure. I'm delighted to do this. So I am a child of Polish-American parents born in this country. My grandparents emigrated to the United States, and I was fortunate enough to have three of them during my growing up who decided, probably with my mother's help, to speak to me only in Polish, even though they could speak English. My grandmother had a butcher shop, a grocery store, so they could speak English. But that forced me at a very early age, even though I didn't want to do it, to speak Polish. So both parents did speak Polish. My mother much better than my father, I have to say. And she made it her cause to pass along to me our shared Polish heritage.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the family connection in everything I've looked at or been exposed to in the Polish community seems to be very strong. There's always a great way of passing on.
It's very true, and it's so important. Of course, the child doesn't want to do it. I have to say that, And then I went on to the Adam Mickiewicz Polish Language School before I could read and write. The founders of the school impressed upon my mother that she had to send me. What kid wants to go to Polish school on Saturday mornings when all their friends are outside playing or watching cartoons on TV? But now, of course, I'm grateful.
Yeah, of course. And you've made that a kind of a hallmark of your involvement, or let's say you've become very involved with the Polish community throughout your life.
Yes,
is that correct? Yeah.
And the Adam Mickiewicz Polish Language School and my mother were really the start of all that. So the Adam Mickiewicz Polish Language School was located then and still at the Associated Polish Home, but Polish Home then was at 2nd and Fairmount. And I have these memories. There was a whole convoluted system. So I grew up in Mayfair. I was born in Mayfair. So my father would drive me to my babcia's. She lived in Fairmount, his mother. And then on Saturday mornings, she would take me to 2nd and Fairmount to Polish Home, to the Polish school. So it was a whole system, and the whole family had to be involved in that. And so from an early age, before kindergarten, I was at Polish Home, so to speak, where I still am.
And so now one of your roles is you're the Honorary Polish Consul. in Philadelphia. Can you talk a little bit about that, what that kind of position entails, and how you kind of got involved with that?
So one has to be nominated for that position. And prior to my having that position, there was no honorary consul in Southeastern Pennsylvania. But Peter Obst and the late Paul Bassi thought that we needed one in Pennsylvania. Subsequent to my being appointed, Napoleon Sykevich was appointed in Pittsburgh, so that I'm southeastern Pennsylvania, he's southwestern Pennsylvania. I guess the best way to describe our roles is to say that it's supportive of the consulates. So I'm in the New York consulate district. We have, I hate to talk about things negatively, but we have no authority to process documents of any kind. But what we can do is help people and give them information so that they can apply, for example, to renew their how do they renew their passports? How does one obtain Polish citizenship? How do I send my grandmother's ashes to Poland? I don't mean to be profane, but
No,
that's the kind of stuff. So honestly, my phone rings 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, because people don't think we're on an office 9-to-5 schedule. But those are the kinds of things that we do. Since Poles in the diaspora have the right to vote in Polish elections, we have to provide a place for elections. And sometimes the consuls come to Philadelphia, for example, to renew passports. So we have to provide a venue for them to do that. So that's basically what I do. They are 5-year terms. I am on my I'm in the middle of my third 5-year term. And those terms are renewed by the Polish government.
Yeah, so if anyone was interested in getting Polish citizenship, there are certain parameters, but they would talk to you possibly if they're in the area.
Yes,
okay.
And I have to say, it ain't easy.
I'm sure bureaucracy is bureaucracy no matter where you go. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the main focus of our talk today is about Polish Christmas traditions. And you've had this kind of lifelong association with the Polish community at large. Based on your experience and your own background, just kind of talk about what makes Polish Christmas unique rather than just kind of your regular celebration of Christmas in the States.
Well, first of all, opłatki, the wafer. I understand that other Slavic nations have that custom as well, but the opłatki is first and foremost the one that comes to mind. It symbolizes the communion wafer, of course, and the sharing of it and the wishes that are extended around the table is what really makes it important and creates that warm atmosphere and makes us, I think, all feel connected to the tradition and connected to each other. So you wish children that they do well in their studies. You wish your friends and family that they remain in good health. And it's a time when all grievances are forgotten, at least for that one night. All things are forgiven. It's said that when animals have opłatki on Christmas, on Vigilia, on Christmas Eve, they speak, but that's only the innocent can hear them.
Okay.
So.
And I was always told.
You wonder why I can't hear them.
I was always told too that because the packs of opłatki that you get sometimes there's a pink one in there.
Yes.
I was always told that was for the animals. Is
Yes,
that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Apparently, that's true. Yeah. So. So that's the one thing that I think makes it unique and makes it special, and a tradition that's well worth preserving.
Yeah, and the opłatki sharing or the opłatki sharing, that usually happens before dinner, right?
Yes.
And then
just before dinner.
And in our tradition, we always, and this is something that you've come across, you kind of remember the people that aren't there, right? That were kind of passed on.
Yes, exactly.
The year prior.
Yeah.
People that you kind of wish were there.
Yes.
Have you celebrated Christmas in Poland or just here in the States?
No, alas, I haven't. But I have been told that it's such a family experience that probably I shouldn't go at that time if I weren't going to be able to celebrate it with family. So, the Polish Christmas uh, differs from ours also. And of course, there's no Santa Claus and all of that fol-de-rol. And it is much more a family experience. But I have been in Poland in December for the Christmas marts as well as for the Szopki competition. That's a unique experience. The Szopka is the manger scene. It's the creche, it's the crib, but this competition is peculiar to Kraków, and instead of a manger as we know it, a stable, a barn, what is used is the architecture of Kraków. So St. Mary's Kościół Mariacki may be the manger. This competition takes place in early December, and there are categories. Children from grade school and people all in up into the seniors make these creches. They're only made out of paper, construction paper, aluminum foil, whatever. Some people put lights and characters in them. Sometimes, in addition to the Holy Family, you find the dragon in there along with Herod. Um, but it's quite the Kraków tradition. Kraków is all geared up for Christmas, even though that's early in December. Poland, Poland decorates beautifully for Christmas. Beautiful light displays, but they're not so garish, and they're not so Santa Clausy and upside down elves. They don't have any of that as we have here in the United States.
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the reasons I asked is because a lot of times it seems like you have the Polish traditions and you have Polish American traditions, and sometimes they're sort of feed off each other. Well, usually they do feed off each other. One influences the other, but sometimes you have things that maybe in the old country have taken on a different, sort of iteration here in the U.S. And it's interesting you bring up the Szopka competition in Krakow because we have this massive Szopka in one of the old schoolrooms at St. Joe's, which we bring people in to show every once in a while, and it takes up half one of these old classrooms. And even though it's automated and there's all kinds of other, like St. John Paul is in there, and actually one of the former pastors of St. Joe's even put himself in there as well.
Right.
So it's kind of funny you take this sort of spin on the traditional manger scene. So I can almost see that sort of continuity came over.
Transplantation.
Right.
So to speak. The other thing I noticed that really surprised me when I was in Poland in December, that the Advent the candles
the Advent wreath?
Advent wreath even in secular businesses. So they're all over the place. We don't see that here. But it's not strictly in a church. I mean, you could go into a shop and there would be an Advent wreath. So I found that rather interesting.
Yeah, and also too. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong with this. It seemed that traditionally there was always this. Poles didn't even decorate their Christmas tree till Christmas Eve.
That's right.
There was the more of a emphasis placed on the season of Advent that you definitely don't get here in the States. I mean, you have heck, I mean, we're recording this right after Halloween, and there have been Christmas decorations in the stores
since before Halloween.
Right. So that is something that I've noticed in kind of the more Polish celebration, is that there's this definite emphasis on the season of Advent.
Oh yes, and there's even, I know from planning Christmas concerts in the female chorus, and in my own radio program, in December. Since I'm only on the air once a week, I start playing kolędy the first week of December.
Mhm.
But really, you shouldn't be doing that in Advent if you're following the Christmas tradition.
Right. And then there's also this tradition of playing kolędy all through February,
Yes.
40 days after
Yes,
Christmas, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that we always did traditionally at St. Joe's too, where we would be singing kolędy up through presentation.
I digress, but I have a funny story about that. So, not about singing, but I like to decorate, and I had Christmas decorations out front of my home, which is in a courtyard complex. So there are 30 houses in the courtyard, right? And not everybody is Christian, and not everybody decorates. So my Christmas decorations were up until February.
Mm-hmm.
And I got a note from the association that I should take the Christmas decorations.
Really?
And I went off and I wrote this letter about how the Christmas tradition in Poland is until February 3rd, Candlemas.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Absolutely. It's funny because we take most of our stuff that we leave the tree up until February 3rd. You know, that's kind of our tradition, but that's interesting. Yeah.
That was funny. Yes. Don't mess with me, guys.
Absolutely. So what are some of the elements of the Polish Vigilia table? Traditionally, there are certain practices and certain things that you would find. Like, so if it were Christmas Eve and we walked into a Polish household, what would we find?
So there have been a lot of cleaning going on days and weeks before, but that evening, so we talked about the opłatki wafer, white linen table cover, which I didn't know until I just read recently that symbolizes Mary's veil. Hay under the table cover, which is reminiscent of the hay in the manger. An empty place at the table for the unexpected guest, Polish hospitality. Meatless meal, in keeping with the church fast and abstinence rules, although they are no longer in effect, but we maintain that at Christmas and Easter. Although some families have to have something to pacify the youngsters, and so sometimes there are meat dishes or shrimp. The Vigilia meal is not to begin until the youngest child spots the first star in the sky and says, there it is, there it is. I don't know what you do on a cloudy day, but that's tradition. The youngest child is supposed to point out the star, and then the meal can begin. There should be 7, 9, or 11 courses, and in no case should there be an odd number of people at the table. There is usually a lighted candle in the window in the hope that the godchild, in the form of a stranger, may visit.
There's this series that's been out. It's called The Chosen, and it showcases the life of Jesus. And in one of the episodes, they're talking about preparing for the Passover or the meal, the Seder meal, whichever it is. And they're talking about keeping an extra plate for Elijah and waiting for the star. And I was as soon as I had heard that, I was like, oh my gosh, I know that. It's remarkable how many of these traditions come from either ancient biblical practices and even sometimes pagan practices, pre-Christian practices in Poland. It just is. It's fascinating that there's so much blending going on.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of us don't know that, and there might be a better acceptance and understanding of others if we knew some of that and we realized the connection.
I agree. Yeah, Poland hasn't been great sometimes
No.
at its tolerance.
We have to say that.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's true. It is absolutely true. And and even in today's world, sad to say, it is. Even in consideration of the recent painful history, the past century, it is. It's something that I think we should recognize because it's part of history. So both of you and I, we love to sing. and there are, I don't know how many Polish kolędy and pastoralki. Can you talk a little bit about that aspect of tradition?
Poland, it is said, Poland has the most Christmas carols of any nation in the world. And traditionally, Polish carols are anonymous. But there are a few exceptions. Besides the pastoralki, which those are the shepherd's carols.
Okay.
Those are the more robust, lively carols. Besides those, my favorite probably is Bóg się rodzi, which is not anonymous.
Okay.
And so the author was Franciszek Karpiński, and it was published in 1792. It's often called the Queen of the Carols, and because of its elevated character and its lyricism. It talks about the mystery of the incarnation through oxymoronic expressions like fire freezes, ogień krzepnie, and brilliance darkens, blask ciemnieje. The last verse, however, has a patriotic message, and that's the one. That's why it's my favorite, because when I was a little kid, back to Adam Mickiewicz Polish Language School, the first Christmas show that I performed in, and I must have been 5 years old, I had to recite the last verse of Bóg się rodzi. So, raise your hand, Jesus child, bless this great land. Podnieś rękę, Boże Dziecię, pobłogosław ojczyznę miłą. So I've never forgotten that, and it's always, it gives me goosebumps still. The melody is in the rhythm of a polonaise. Many of our carols are dance rhythms, and fitting for a song that would come to be considered the essential Polish carol. It was also considered to be the Polish national anthem. Of course, that didn't happen.
And it's funny because so we sing Bóg się rodzi at Pasterze, the midnight mass at St. Joe. That's the first one we do. And there was a long-time choir director at St. Joe's called Mr. Rykachevsky. And you did know him, really? Okay. And he wrote.
I'm old, Mike.
Oh, come on! Here's old as you feel, Debbie. But he wrote this arrangement of the carol, and we sing it every year. And I absolutely love it. It kind of, like you said, gives you goosebumps. It gives you this, as a singer, but it also has this energy to it.
It's so majestic.
And actually, I think the description of it said, "Majestat Czecznia." Yeah, like sing it majestically.
Yes.
And it's kind of sad because it's this great arrangement that we have for four voices, and we don't necessarily get that all the time. But I still, whenever I can, I sing that bass part as much as I can. It gives such light into the whole feeling of it. So it's not even knowing that history. That's really very enlightening.
Well, but the way it's written gave you that without having to know.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And that's one of the things about music, I'm sure
exactly.
you know this, and I know this as well, that you can write music that even if you don't understand the words, if you don't understand these great phrases that you mentioned, if it gives that type of a presence, that's really wonderful.
Yeah. And we have, in the female chorus, we have a very interesting arrangement of this. And so the altos are sort of the basis.
Okay.
And we have a really great part that, sometimes the altos get this part, which is this Johnny one note business. But that's not the case in this one. And the director's always saying it's you guys that are supporting everybody else. So anyway.
Yeah, because that's another thing you're involved with, right? The
chorus.
Marcela Kochanska Sembrek female chorus, right?
Yes,
yeah. So and you'll be doing probably a Christmas concert.
Concert January 12th.
Okay, great.
After Christmas concert.
Well, but still within.
Because there's so much going on at Christmas time.
That's true.
And I was thinking about this, but since you brought up the chorus, and you sing, so Philadelphia had the Paderewski Choral Society, a mixed chorus, for 50 years. And we keep trying to resurrect it and cannot do that without men. So, gentlemen, if you like to sing, we'd really like to do this, and you'd be part of bringing back the legendary Paderewski Choral Society.
Yeah, that would be.
So tell me if you want to sing.
Yeah, I mean, singing is. I think it's a Polish saying I'd heard before about something about along the lines of if you want to know a real Pole, ask him to dance and sing, something to that effect. I don't know what it might be.
Yeah, I've never heard that, but yes.
Yeah, I think it was like a Mazovsha concert or something, and he said it. But there's a lot of truth to that, and we have these great organizations that are around. In addition to the Marcelika Heinzke Sember chorus, we have PKM,
yes,
which we're both members of.
Yes,
and these groups are out there that always are looking for new enthusiastic members.
Are crying for
and
members.
It's something that if you are interested in your Polish heritage, and you can find these outlets for it, we definitely encourage you to do so.
Encourage you. Yes. Come join us.
Do you have a personal favorite memory of Christmas as it relates to our Polish traditions or from your own family?
I was thinking about that, and not one specific, but I think the whole Christmas Eve Vigilia, from the beginning, sharing opłatek and the Vigilia meal, and then Pasterka, going on to midnight mass. That's the shepherd's mass, Pasterka. The atmosphere is just, it's extraordinary. It's so warm. It's affectionate, and it, to me, it points out how we are all united as we celebrate this great tradition. I mean, I remember lots of Christmas Eves and Vigilias with my grandparents, and they were so proud that their grandchild was doing this and maybe saying a few words in Polish in sharing of the opłatek, and that just made their life. So that's that experience.
Yeah, that's a wonderful. I've seen that myself. That light on the grandparents' face when you're doing those, just continuing it on. It is. There's something, and I don't know necessarily it's uniquely Polish, but
no,
you definitely see that when a grandparent can give that gift to a grandchild. Yes. And because there's so many aspects of Polish Christmas that are tied into these traditions, I think that it's so apparent, and you said it beautifully, that it just you have that communication across the generations.
Yeah, just it's sad, for a long time we were teaching children Polish at the Adam Mickiewicz Polish Language School. We're not teaching children anymore. We just don't have them. We're teaching adults, which is okay. But what I was wanted to get at was that there were many of the children who didn't have grandparents, and parents maybe were Polish American, or maybe only one parent was Polish American, and so those kids didn't have that connection with their Polish grandparents, which is what for me was very important.
Yeah, and I think though too, that's where a community can step up.
That's true.
And it's, having been into genealogy so much, my grandfather didn't know his grandfather. Actually, neither of my grandparents really did. And even though there was that absence of that person, and it was based on them dying young and tragically, things like that, they had this whole community of people around them, whether it was extended family or you had the church necessarily, or these different organizations that you could learn it from somebody else. And I think that's a beautiful thing, that when you have Polish language schools or Polish organizations or Polish churches that are still active today, it can help to pass on that. Even if you don't necessarily have that babcia or that jaju present in your life, it is possible to access that. It absolutely is.
Yes, you're right. But the tragedy now is that we're losing the Polish parishes.
Right.
So that was another resource.
Right. So we kind of touched on this a little bit, but what advice would you give to someone who may just be rediscovering their Polish heritage on how to best prepare for a traditional Polish Christmas? Are there any particular resources that you might point them to?
You said yourself, of course, the organizations and churches. Cookbooks, for example, Polish cookbooks, not only, I have a very old one which may be out of print, I don't know, but it not only gives you recipes, but it tells you all of the things we talked about how you set a Vigilia table and what's required and how many dishes and all of that. Actually, if you go online and just Google Polish Christmas Eve traditions, you will find a plethora of stuff. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly true. The internet has been, for all of its faults sometimes, it does have this bevy of information, and there are a lot of cultural resources that I've come across. I'm sure you have too in researching for your radio show.
Sure.
Myself for this, that
yes.
there actually is a lot out there for people who
really
want to find it. So we talked about opłatki, and usually you make a wish or a hope for people during the opłatki ceremony. What would be your wish for our listeners?
First and foremost, I suppose that they continue to live in and promote our Polish heritage and to have the Vigilia tradition as best they can, and all of the other traditions that we have. So sometimes when we lose our grandparents, some of those traditions go by the wayside. But and of course, good health. You can't do anything without that. As you mentioned earlier, there are so many Polish American organizations in the greater Delaware Valley that are crying for members, and just get involved. Just pick one of them and get involved, because that way we'll continue. All of this will continue. Without members, we won't be able to. So there's PKM, there's the Polish Language School, there's the Associated Polish Home, there's the Polish Heritage Society, there's the National Polish American Congress, there's the National American Council for Polish Culture. So I'm not saying that because I'm doing all of that, but I just urge you to get involved in something and help us to keep all of this going.
So Debbie, in addition to all of your other involvement in the Polish American community, you also have a radio program of your own, correct?
I do. Whoever would have believed that I would be on the radio now, almost 20 years. Yes, the program is called Polonia Today. It's a Polish program in English and is interspersed with Polish music and divided loosely into 3 parts. News from Poland and Ukraine, the Cultural Corner, and events in the greater Delaware Valley Polish American community. As I say, all interspersed with Polish music. Classical, polkas and obereks, folk songs, popular music, and oldies too. Sundays, 1:30 p.m. online at www.dbam.com. 8:60 a.m.
Thank you so much, Debbie, for being a part of our podcast today, our second podcast. And we wish you very much a Merry Christmas. Wesołe Świąt.
Wesołych Świąt Bożego Narodzenia i szczęśliwego Nowego Roku.
Yes, that's right, of course. So I always had trouble saying szczęśliwego Nowego Roku. December's Polish saint of the month is Saint John Cantius. In Polish, Święty Jan Kanty. His feast day is December 23rd, and in Poland is celebrated October 20th. He lived from the 23rd of June, 1390, to the 24th of December, 1473. John was originally from the small town of Kęty in southern Poland, close to the village of Oświęcim. This location is sadly remembered today for its German name of Auschwitz. Little is known about his background, except that in his youth he possessed a superior intelligence that laid the foundation for a lifetime of academic excellence. He earned his first doctorate in 1418 from the Krakow Academy, today the esteemed Jagiellonian University. Over more than 50 years in academia, he taught as a respected professor at the university, serving as director of the theology and philosophy departments at various times. His area of study also ventured into physics, where advancement in studies were to lead to the inspiration of Galileo and Newton generations later. Soon after he obtained his doctorate, he was ordained a priest and served in area Krakow parishes. It was in this role that his saintliness was most recognized, as he was adamant about living a life of austerity with only his basic needs met. He was widely known throughout the city for his work amongst the poorest of the city's residents, regularly donating any spare clothing, money, or food. He also was known for his charity and mentorship towards students at the university, especially those struggling to make ends meet while pursuing their studies. Dying at the age of 83, he was interned in the Church of St. Anne in Krakow and canonized in 1767. As a co-philosopher, the future John Paul II was greatly inspired by the saint's life, having studied at the same Krakow University and praying often at his tomb for guidance. Dozens of churches in American Polonia are dedicated to him, and he remains one of the most well-known of Polish saints. We all have that one teacher that we remember for life. It could be someone in grade school or high school who stayed late after hours, tutoring us in a difficult subject to help us pass. Maybe it was a professor in college who opened our minds to new ideas, so much that we enrolled in every class that they offered. Or perhaps it wasn't in the academic world, but a coworker, supervisor, parent, or friend who taught the life lessons that formed us into who we are and believed in us even when we had given up hope in ourselves. No matter the subject, school, or workplace, few people enter the education field who don't in some way care about the academic and lifetime success of their students. Thousands of dedicated teachers in our community give their lives to the education of the world around them in a wide variety of disciplines, both inside and outside of the classroom. The memories of these lessons, taught to us by those special teachers, can help to give us a roadmap for our future both in work and at home. In 15th century Poland, John Cantius was one of those memorable teachers for half a century of Krakowian students. An expert in fields of study that attempted to explain the meaning of the universe, he was able to enlighten minds in the classroom and from the pulpit to take on the world. However, just like those same teachers in our lives, it was often outside of the classroom where he was to have the greatest impact. In an era before financial aid and scholarships, he assisted those in need, helping them to cement opportunity in a world that was not always the most sensitive to their socioeconomic situations. In addition, his high status as a university professor didn't keep him from exercising a humility and care for the most desperate in the community at large beyond the academic halls. When our ancestors came to these shores, it was to a society in which they were oftentimes looked down upon with great contempt. Few provided the helping hands of assistance, and more often than not, just the opposite. Perhaps this is partially why the large number of churches are dedicated to him in America's Polonia. The yearning for the charity and compassion of modern-day saints like John Cantius was very real in their immigrant communities. It is due to his model of charity and compassion that generations can still look to him for guidance. As Pope John Paul II observed on a 1997 visit to the saint's tomb, his was a life in which knowledge and wisdom seek covenant with holiness. Reflection questions. Recall a favorite teacher from your life. What was it about their manner of teaching, formally and informally, that had an impact on you? How do you share those lessons with others? We are all called to be teachers in one form or another. How do I best serve as a role model and educator for those that may look to me for guidance. If I feel I do not live up to this example, I would hope to. How can I change that starting today? St. John Cantius recognized those in his community that struggle due to circumstances not of their own choosing. How can I work to support their modern equivalents in our city and community? The COVID pandemic challenged teachers and students in ways not seen in recent memory. The rate of teachers leaving the profession due to exhaustion, despair, and lack of appropriate compensation is startling. How can we work in our communities to renew and attend to the needs of our valuable teachers? We certainly hope that you enjoyed our special Christmas edition of Pierogi to Prayer, and that you will consider incorporating some of the traditions you learned about today into your festive celebrations this year. In lieu of the usual New Year's resolutions for diet and exercise, might I recommend following Debbie's call to get more involved in the variety of Polish organizations that exist in our area. Nothing helps to keep Polish culture alive more than by joining one. A list of ways to do so will be available on our social media pages this month. No matter your talent or interest, there is guaranteed to be a place for you and a group that would be more than happy to welcome you. If you would like some opłatki of your own for use at your Vigilia meal, or perhaps even to share with your pets to see if you can hear them talk on Christmas Eve, Blessed Opłatki packets will be available at St. Joseph's Church after Mass, starting on the first Sunday of Advent. If you would like to see our historic church in person outside of our normal Sunday Mass schedule, you will have an opportunity on December 14th, as St. Joseph's History Society will be conducting the usual tours of the church starting at 2:00 p.m. Please email the History Society at stjhistory@yahoo.com or see our apostolate website and the bulletin for more information. Also, on Christmas Eve, December the 24th, at 10:00 p.m., will be our annual Pasterze Mass, with the pre-Mass Polish Christmas carols, or kolędy, sing-along starting at 9:30 p.m. In fact, the music you heard in the background of our podcast today happened to be recordings from the midnight masses of past years. This is a wonderful tradition, and we would love to see you. The historic automated nativity display, or Szopka, that we also mentioned in our episode, will be open in the old school building for viewing following the Mass. If you aren't familiar with this rare and unique piece, be sure to check out our social media pages for pictures and more information. Before closing, I would also like to send a personal thank you out to everyone who has subscribed to our podcast thus far and has been spreading news about it across their various communities. Your support is incredibly appreciated, and as of this recording, we have racked up almost 200 listens across our various platforms. It has truly been humbling to know that so many people are interested in what we have to offer. Like Debbie, my opłatek wish for you all is to grow in knowledge and appreciation of our wonderful Polish cultural and spiritual heritage, helping it to live on in your hearts for years to come. I offer you a very sincere dziękuję bardzo. The mission of our apostolate is to celebrate and share our Polish and Catholic traditions across our southern New Jersey diocese and beyond. We do this throughout the year by hosting cultural programs and tours of our historic church, as well as every Sunday at our 10:00 bilingual Polish-English Mass with Polish music and associated traditions. Please follow us at Pierogi to Prayer on Facebook and Instagram, and if you like what you hear, kindly leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you listen to, and please help spread the word. It makes a huge difference to our program. You can always also drop us a line at pierogitoprayer@gmail.com. We would love to hear any comments or suggestions you may have. And until next time, salte some pierogi and go sit with the saint. Dziękujemy. Thank you. Do usłyszenia. And from our family to yours, Wesołych Świąt i Szczęśliwego Nowego Roku. A very special Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.